you talk so much about legacy in your book. And I really believe that this is your chance to really leave a legacy that outlives your business, outlives you. So that is motivation enough, I think, to get the word out. Everybody who's listening here knows something we don't know. Everyone has some perspective or knowledge, even if it's on a topic a lot of people talk about. It's your perspective that's interesting. So even if there's 100 books on your topic, the lens through which you see the world is what we want to hear. So just start.
Hello, profiters, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. I am so excited today. I have Aj Harper with us. Yes, Aj Harper. She actually is an author. She's multiple authors of best-selling books, so you'll never know it because she was once a ghostwriter. But Aj is actually Mike McCowit's writing partner. So when you think about Profit First, you think about Pumpkin Plan. You know, I used to see Mike, but now I see Aj just as much as I see Mike when I look at that book. But Aj is the editor. She's also a publishing specialist, and she really specializes in helping authors write transformational books. And not just transformational books, but books that really resonate with the reader, that change people's lives, but also helps authors grow their brand and make that significant impact in the world that they've been wanting to make all along. You know, she's worked with the New York Times bestselling authors. She also has this group called Top 3 Book Workshop. And really what it does is helps authors create books that become must read. So I'm really excited today about bringing Aj on our show and talking about how to write a must read book. And for you guys that are watching on video here, I have a copy of Aj's book, Write a Must Read. And you can see all the Post-its here because I've devoured it so much like a Snickers bar. You guys know how much I love Snickers, but I have devoured her book because it's so much goodness. So I'm so excited to have Aj. Aj, I hope you don't mind, but I like to start with reading a part from your book that just so excites me for the guys that have thought about writing a book. And you know, this is actually from Aj's book, and it's a story from Aj's life. And I really like the story, and I'm going to read it because it's going to really start our conversation today. And the section in the book is called Something from Nothing. And this is an amazing section because if you've ever felt like some point in your life of didn't want to try something new, afraid of taking that first step, may this chapter resonate with you. But it's called Something from Nothing. And it says, I'm quite sure I couldn't have picked a worse time in my life to start a new business and start writing in a medium I knew nothing about. At the time, I made good on my promise to myself to never go back to a straight job. By the way, her definition of a straight job is what I do, like 8 to 5 job. She was an artist, so she didn't want to do that. She was a writer. Then it goes on and says, I had a 6-month-old baby, 5 hours of childcare a week, and a raging case of postpartum depression. Mothers, don't you remember us all being there? Oh, and we were broke. We lived in a 4-floor walk-up in an up-and-coming part of Brooklyn that the gentrifiers called South Slope to align with the much fancier Park Slope several blocks over. If you're not aware, a walk-up means no elevator. Imagine hauling a baby and all their gear up and down 4 flights of stairs, plus the 12 steps on the front stoop, so you can get to the coffee shop to write. Now, you're probably thinking, why didn't Aj just write at home? Well, it's like trying to cry it out, self-soothe thing. My son, Jack, only took naps in my arms. Unless he fell asleep in his stroller while we walked, I would stroll for about 10 minutes, sometimes 20 blocks. And when he finally fell asleep, I double back to my favorite coffee shop, the one that let me bring the stroller inside, pull out my laptop from my diaper bag, and get to work. I usually fit in about 90 minutes of writing time, 2 hours if I got lucky. It was a terrible time to learn a new way to write and to start a new business. Most days, I walked for miles just to keep the scary thoughts out of my head. Jack wouldn't sleep through the night, and so I was exhausted pretty much all the time. Every day was a struggle to keep going. My only joy, the sweet smile of his round face. We had nothing. I was sure I knew nothing. I felt like I was nothing. And then I made something a book. It was only 20,000 words or so about a topic I really didn't care about, but it was a book. I scratched it out while Jack slept, word by word, page by page. One day it was a blank document with a blinking cursor, and then several miles and naps later, it was done. It was nothing, and then it was something. And that something became more and more and more. It became the basis of a new business, a new craft, a new life, a new me. If you wait until the perfect time to write your super rough draft, you may never get to it. You don't have to feel good to write. I've written through depression, anxiety, and sickness. You don't have to be in an office or a room or even a desk to write. I write on planes, in cars, even on park benches. You don't need a lot of free time to write. For years, I only wrote when my son slept, and sometimes I only had 20 minutes to get a few words in. Don't wait until you feel better or have a better condition. Write anyway. Let me tell you, the broken years were the darkest of my life, and still I made something from nothing. No matter what, if you just stay the course, you will too. Please join me in welcoming Miss Aj Harper to the platform. Hey, AJ, how are you?
Hey, Suzanne, I'm emotional now because you read that excerpt and I'm vulnerable to write that, but I felt it would really be of service. But I'm remembering that time and I'm emotional thinking about it.
Well, thank you for writing a book that relates to all of us. I don't think there's a mother out there or business owner out there that didn't feel that insecurity of starting and feeling like nothing and trying to prove to the world that they were something. And your book just takes us to so many levels that we're not alone. So thank you for doing that.
I love that you read that. Thank you.
So AJ, today what I want to do is, a lot of people have talked about wanting to write a book. And I remember before I got the privilege of working with you on my book, Profit First and Minority Business Enterprises, for years, I had spun it in my head. And never, ever took the first page. I didn't have a jack to push. I just never could get to that first page. And it really was going through your top 3 workshop, learning how to really outline and figure out what the message was and the purpose of the book that I really got to the point where I was. And today, I want to talk to the business owners that are out there that want to make a bigger impact. That you talked about the business card book and creating a book that not just something that showcases your knowledge or your expertise, but really changes a life. And that's what I want to talk about today in your book, Write a Must Read. So first of all, AJ, how did you get to this journey? And let's share for those that don't know the story behind the story. And how did you start this journey and discover this technique?
Well, I was a playwright for many years. And then when my son was born, I wanted to be present for him. I knew we were just going to have one kid and I didn't want to miss out on that. So I said, well, I'm not going to go back to a straight job, as you mentioned in the story. I need to write anything. Playwrights don't make any money unless you're, Lin-Manuel Miranda. I mean, it's a very small number. So I decided I would just write whatever as long as it was legal and not super, inappropriate. So I just started writing when he was asleep. And I went on Elance, which is now called Upwork. And I just took whatever job so I could learn. But within a very short time, a person found me there who wanted a book, prescriptive nonfiction book, meaning a book that helps you make something better. So in this case, it was a book about relationships. And I took the job and turns out that ghostwriting is something I was really good at. And I think it's because of my playwriting background, because I just looked at, okay, I have to sound like this person, but I already had a good ear for creating characters and what they sound like. So it was a good fit for me. And that's how I started. That was in 2005. And stop me anytime you want.
No, this is great.
But I didn't really know what I was doing. And I'm transparent about that in my own book. It's just explaining I had to come up with my own system and frameworks because I really didn't know any. And so over time, I figured out how to write a book that's truly transformational versus a book that's just to get out there and raise your profile. To write a book people actually read versus a book that's just sitting on a shelf.
I love that. Now, when I was reading your book, you talked about really there were 2 types of authors because, coming from a ghostwriter background, you had, the people that you talked about that just wanted a book that yesterday, and I called it book in 3 days, or I love what you called it.
I call it the drive-through, right? So it's the book drive-through where you order it like you want a hamburger.
Yeah. And then you had the authors that really wanted to make an impact that said, I don't just want to write a book, but this book is going to outlive me. And I want to leave something in the world that is a masterpiece. And you noticed in your writing of the book that it was those that wrote a book for the reader that really had the impact and created the results they really wanted versus the business card book. Talk about that concept, reader first, reader always. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I know you have heard that so many times in class, but it's a abbreviated way of saying a book is not about something, a book is for someone. So you need to make a mindset shift away from thinking about this is the book I want to write with my stories, my knowledge, my, and shifting to I'm writing a book for someone to help them get what they want. And that might be solving a problem or feeling better or seeming less alone or gaining knowledge. It might be a tangible goal they have or intangible. When you make the shift to thinking, I want to help them get there, and you put the reader first in all your choices, then it's easier to write a book that really resonates with readers, but also delivers on its promise.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I know, like, from my experience, when I was writing with AJ, it wasn't that easy to put
No,
a
it's
reader
not
first,
easy.
there was a way I wanted to say it, and there was a way that, I felt like the reader probably couldn't hear it that way. I mean, they would hear it, but they would get really mad if they heard it that way. And, and just having to think about that and think about, how to phrase things or position things in a way that the reader could hear it first was extremely important. AJ, do you mind sharing some tips on how do we make a book that is reader first? First of all, how do we know what the reader really needs?
Well, I just want to stop just for a moment and just commend you because when you were writing your book, you worked tirelessly to get that book done and excellence was your top of mind and legacy as well. But once you thought about what story is really going to connect, how can I move people to do this? What's the main thing I want to say? You found all your stories, you found all your stuff, and it clicked for you. So even though it was hard for you, you up leveled your book beyond what I think you even thought it would be, quite honestly. And anyone can do that. I think it's a matter of first, again, getting to know your reader, and you know your reader. So you had an advantage. It's the clients you work with, it's the colleagues you have in your life. And in many ways, it's you, an earlier version of you. So that's a good place to start. If your reader is an earlier version of yourself before you figured some stuff out, then you try to remember that. What did that feel like? What was I worried about? What were my questions? What did I really want? What was my life like? And if not, then you think about your clients or your customers, or maybe it's a different group of people. And if you have to, if you really can't connect, you don't know them that well, then you can do surveys, you can do little polls, you can just do private interviews and start to collect information about what really matters to them.
Oh yeah, definitely. So starting with those conversations that you've had, with your favorite customers or maybe not the favorite ones, that what are the questions that you are always hearing? What are the struggles that they're always having? And then connecting the stories that will teach those lessons and how you learned it. One of the things that I love about your book, AJ, was it was extremely vulnerable, even from the Stephen Pressfield story where, you wanted to say something to him and you didn't want to say, and you were shy and this other lady darted in front of you and got her book signed, but you still got your picture, and you still had your conversation and you made it through that. Vulnerability, a lot of authors struggle with vulnerability. But that's how you create a book that connects, right? Is, you build that relationship and you build that trust. Tell me about how do you overcome vulnerability or not wanting to be vulnerable or scared to be vulnerable, as an author or a new author?
Well, you can keep it contained. I mean, you were very vulnerable in your book talking about low points, and you also had low points when you had a young child. That's just something that we have in common. You were building a business with a young child, so was I. So are so many people, right? But you don't have to bleed all over the page. I think sometimes we're afraid that we have to say all the things, and we don't. We can just take a moment that other people can relate to and share how that feels. We don't have to share all the mess. So that's number one. But the other is to think about all the stories of vulnerability that helped you. You hear them all the time. You watch them on the news. We hear them all the time. We read them in books. We love to hear stories of vulnerability in the media. What that does for you to hear somebody say, this is how I felt, and this is what helped me. This is as old as human beings, is telling stories that help people. So if you can, again, it's a reader first thing, redirect your fear of being vulnerable to think, how can it be of service?
I love that. So being of service again, reader first, being of service, even if it means putting all your business out there in the book.
Oh, come on. You didn't put all your business out, and neither did I. So you can be careful. You don't have to do things that make you uncomfortable.
Got it. That absolutely makes sense. With that, one of the things that really helped me when I was going through the top three workshop was, before I started working with AJ, I sat an idea for like a whole year. I think I met AJ like maybe a year, almost 2 years before I actually started working with her. And the reason why was every time I sat down to write, I didn't know what I wanted to write about. It was just, I write a couple sentences and go, oh, I don't want a book about that. And one of the things that you did was you helped me create an outline of things that I wanted to talk about, like bullet points. And that thing became my best friend. Like if I didn't know what to write about next, let's see what's on the outline. Let's pick something from the outline. Let's talk about the outline and figure out how do we create a book that really sends that complete message.
So the first thing is to think about outlining, not like putting everything into grouping them into categories, which is our human desire. Can I put all my stuff this goes with this goes with that, and that's how we organize. It's to think differently about it by first thinking from where is my reader starting and where do I want them to end up and how am I going to get them there? So instead of thinking about a collection of ideas that are all mixed, you put the like things with the like things. I call it the silverware drawer method. Instead of the silverware drawer, write a journey. And so it's about getting them to the promise. And when you make that shift with outlining, it really opens things up. So now you see stuff you don't need, and you also see gaps.
I love it. That's true. And it organizes your thoughts too. That's another thing that I really liked about it. Just organize your thoughts. And like you said, it created a journey, it created the path. Like we don't want to start with the end and the beginning. We want to build that momentum.
Right. Because you had some mindset stuff you needed to fix for folks in the early part of your book that you had to do first because you wanted them to have that context as you were relaying other more technical information. So they would take it really seriously and understand how the choices they were making about their business, especially profit margins and what they were doing with their money, were rooted in something deeper that they needed to address. And that was, you decided that based on knowing your reader really well.
Thank you. Now, there was a part in my book writing journey that shocked me. And I never thought that writing a book would be like this. And I remember like when you first had a class that talked about it, I think that's when reality really sat in for me. And I know that a lot of our audience were entrepreneurs, different industries. And, many of my clients have talked about writing a book. And this is the part that totally floored me. And I'm going to read a section from your book here. And it's called, it's on page 230 if you guys have a hard copy, but it's called Market the Hell Out of Your Book.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And here it goes. It says, let's get one thing straight. Marketing your book is your responsibility. If you think signing with a traditional publisher means you can sit back and write and they'll take care of finding your readers, someone gave you bad information. What they will do is push that trade, distribution, sales engine behind the scenes so your book is more likely to end up on shelves. But getting readers excited to buy your book is all you. Of course, there are exceptions. Publishers will pull out all the stops for some offers, reality TV stars, movie stars, political stars. I'm sure you see the theme now. If you're already famous, no problem. Your publisher will throw some money at marketing your book. They'll do this because you already have a following. They'll also do this for some successful authors' next books. Not the first one, but those that follow the successful book. Again, the publisher will do this because the author already has a following. That said, some traditional publishers will help you amplify efforts. In other words, they will help you if you help yourself. So please help yourself, help your ideal readers find your book. This hit me, AJ, because as I was writing my book and I was starting to love it, I was putting together the content of the layout, right, of all my bullet points. It hit me that, oh my gosh, my book was going to be another business. I was starting another business, and just the things that it took to grow an accounting firm, I was going to have to do the same thing for a book. And I was going to have to do a budget. I was going to have to do like a plan of how we're going to get this social media marketing out there. And it absolutely surprised me. AJ, let's talk about marketing a book and how some ways that we can market a book so that our ideal readers can find us.
Well, first it's to figure out where they hang out. So, my readers are on Facebook and LinkedIn, and maybe they're also on Twitter, but it's primarily Facebook and LinkedIn. So I'm not going to go concentrate my efforts in a place where they're mostly not hanging out. And you might just say that's actually the opposite for me, right? So you find the place, and it's not just online places, it's also offline. Which conferences do they go to, which events, and so forth. So it's making sure that your plan is where they are, and then figuring out what would be of value to them. How would they like to hear from you? What do they need? And creating something that is an extension of the book that's of value, whether it's like you have a podcast and that's really, really helpful and that's of value. So it could be podcasts, could be videos, could be the written word, more of the written word. It just kind of depends. And then once you've done that, thinking about how that can be sustainable is another thing. I think one of the main things authors forget is that the publication date is not the finish line, it's the starting pistol to start the race. And most of the time, authors are really tired, and understandably so, once they get to pub date, but it's really the beginning. And if you just need to shift your mindset around that to think, okay, what's sustainable for me? I can't market like in launch mode all the time, but what could I do on a regular basis to keep it going?
I love that. And, this book, Write a Must Read, for you guys that haven't got the book, you need to go out and get the book, Write a Must Read by Aj Harper. And one of the things I like about it is as you're going through this book, there's going to be different exercises that you're going to be doing. Like she's going to have you like, go ahead and put a post on social media that you decided to write a book, and then, you're going to be dropping different nuggets as you go throughout the book because there's like little exercises at the end of each chapter. So, you're going to be marketing this book as you go along, and it's not going to cost you any money because you don't even realize you're marketing this book as you're reading the book. So, amazing book. You definitely got to read it. You definitely got to do it. And for those of you guys who are on the fence, get off the fence and write this book. Now, AJ, I always like to ask you if you could, for those of you guys that are on the fence, like I said, it took me 2 years to actually pick up the pen. Actually, this is so sad, AJ. I actually bought a pink laptop computer to celebrate, like when I had the idea I was going to write a book.
I love that.
I bought it, and I sat on it for 2 years because just to motivate me to write this book. And when I wrote the book, I did write it on the pink laptop. But for those people that are entrepreneurs that are on the fence that, want to leave a legacy of their work, want to pass down and each one teach one, what advice do you have for them to just push them over the edge to get started?
Well, it's a long game. So the longer you wait, the longer it's going to be. It's much longer than you think it is to get a book done properly. So, time is not promised. So there's no point in waiting because the creative process is more long and it's longer and more involved than you think it is. So you might as well just start a little bit at a time. And also, you talk so much about legacy in your book. And I really believe that this is your chance to really leave a legacy that outlives your business, outlives you. So that is motivation enough, I think, to get the word out. Everybody who's listening here knows something we don't know. Everyone has some perspective or knowledge, even if it's on a topic a lot of people talk about, it's your perspective that's interesting. So even if there's 100 books on your topic, the lens through which you see the world is what we want to hear. So just start.
I love it. Just start. She had nothing and she had something. So
yes.
You got to just start with that book because it is an amazing journey and you learn so much about yourself when writing a book, because you have to dissect the why of every story, and what did you learn from this story? You come to terms with a lot of things you didn't know you had to come to terms with as you're writing a book. It's absolutely amazing experience to do that. And when I decided to work with AJ, I knew I hadn't written since high school. I was like the editor of a newspaper, of our school newspaper in junior high, but I don't know if that counts. But, it wasn't a side of my brain I was used to using anymore because I was used to using more of the mathematics side at that point. And, and I remember it hit me. I said, if I write this book, it's going to outlive me. It's going to outlive me. and people that I never met might actually read this book. And it hit me. I said, you might as well do something that and put something out in the world that you're going to be proud of, not something that's going to have like crazy typographical errors or like, font issues or like, and working with someone like AJ is an amazing experience because, just how like I would write a story and she goes, you need to start this chapter on the bike. You need to start this chapter on the bike, or this is the story that your reader wants to hear. Right? They want to know why you're on the bike and where you're going. They want to know your daughter's name and, not just that you had a daughter. And she really helped bring out just the magic, I think, in the stories and in the book. And I think that's to say about working in a group, versus writing alone. A lot of people say, I'm just going to get up every morning. I'm going to write by myself. But being able to be in a group where you've got other people writing a book too. And, I felt bad because like these people in the group were actually like real writers, they actually had an English as a talent versus like,
not all of them, not all of them.
It felt like it, and, but being in that group and watching everybody progress alone and learning from each other's ideas, it really does help extremely well. So if you get a chance to check out her top 3 books workshop, definitely do that because, it's a different journey. It's a different journey than anything you've ever done. And it really is an amazing collective from that standpoint. Now, AJ, for our readers and listeners who want to learn more, who want to connect with you, that want to learn how to write a must read, in addition to buying the book, that is amazing. How do they connect with you to work with you?
Well, you can go to ajharper.com to learn more about workshops, and we have a writing sprint group and fun things. You can also go to writeamustread.com to learn more about the book and download tools and rewards and cool things.
Thank you, AJ. What we're going to do is we're going to put AJ's contact information in the show notes so that you can just scroll to the bottom. If you guys are driving right now or walking, definitely we'll have that at the bottom of the podcast episode so you can download that to contact her and work with her.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, AJ. It was amazing. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and thank you for putting out like just great books in this world, right?
I know it's my favorite thing in the world is to see all of the authors doing good work like yourself. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Don't forget to buy the book, Write a Must Read by AJ Harper.